Aloha, nerds, and welcome back to the Salawag's Why It's Great Gut Reaction, where I watch things and react from the gut. On this show, I try to be technical and examine the film from a filmmaker's point of view. Let's look at the nuts and bolts of the entertaining aspects and try to get nerdy and maybe a little boring. Oh, yeah, we're going to get boring so hard. We're going to get so boring about this movie. It's going to be awesome. So, we're going to talk about Mission Impossible, which I just watched for the millionth time. I really enjoy the film Mission Impossible. It's one of my favorite action movies slash spy movies for all time. Directed by Brian DePalma, starring Tom Cruise, John Vogt, and Ving Rhames, and Jean Reno. Quite a few awesome names on this film. Gotta say, I didn't even say all the great ones. This is one of my childhood favorites, and it's still a favorite of mine today. I know that the sequels have a lot of entertainment value. The action's incredible to look at. But when it comes down to the nuts and bolts filmmaking and storytelling, and if we're talking about the spy genre itself, we're not talking about the action genre. We're talking about the spy genre. The first Mission Impossible really delivers a superb movie about how you act as a spy and how you can do a very intimate spy film. It doesn't go to the James Bond heights of action and drama and melodrama. It does now, or it's starting to. But especially for this first Mission Impossible film, it's very down to earth. It's very straightforward, and everything that happens in a way that makes sense to you as you watch it. And while the technology is dated, I feel like the same methods would still be required to achieve these goals that are laid out in this movie. It's got everything. It does have action, but it is a spy movie. It commits to that spy tone. But tone is not, these days people with tone, they totally got everything backwards. Story comes first. It's a spy thriller, and that is what this movie delivers on. Tom Cruise has to infiltrate criminal organizations and commit great feats and great acts of dramatic acrobatics, which is not really required for any spy movie, but that is the spectacle that we come to Mission Impossible for. But after performing these feats, he still has to do believable, realistic spy work. He has to accomplish everything in the rules of the spy genre. You need evidence. You need the guy that you're trying to capture. Everything has to be lined up so the boss knows that you did your job fully. But because it's a movie and it is part action movie, you are going to have the big explosive finale where the villain must die because he's the bad guy. That is all of that entertainment stuff is in this film, but what makes it a great movie, the reason I'm talking about it for, it's the why it's great gut reaction. I still like to think that gut reaction follows the value and goals of why it's great. That is, I'm here to talk about something I love and why. But also for the boring reason, hey, what was the filmmaker thinking, or what can we take out of this as a filmmaker to appreciate and appreciate what could be in the next film, or if we're making a movie, apply it to that movie. So for my gut reaction today, I've found that I like to do these very nerdy, very specific technical examinations for these gut reactions. I like to just keep it to one or two things about a movie that really make it strong in some kind of way. So what I'm going to talk about here today is screenwriting and directing, but very much in particular in that aspect, I'm focusing on good character writing, good character direction, and all that stuff. That part of the strength of this movie is really great character construction, where the character, understanding who's the character of each person, what are their character traits, what are they like, how do they behave. All of these things are crucial to this movie because it's a spy movie. Spy meaning you have to fit yourself into a world. You may not be from that world, but you have to fit yourself into that world, extract information, and then get out of that world and get back to your boss. And in every way, that is what this movie's about. Because here, I'm going to get into the premise real quick, just so we kind of, for those who've decided not to watch the movie and are still listening to me for some stupid reason. The premise of Mission Impossible is the same premise of all the sequels. The sequels all copy the first movie, so just watch the first movie, for the love of God. Ethan Hunt, Tom Cruise, is on a team of spies. They're trying to intercept another spy who's trying to steal the knock list that has the identities of everyone who's a spy in Europe. Every American spy that's in Europe. Something goes terribly wrong. The spy that gets the data seemingly gets away, but then all of the Ethan Hunt's team members are killed right in front of him. And one of the team members finds the spy who gets the list, and he has been attacked and stabbed, and the list has been taken from him, and then she gets killed. And Tom Cruise gets away and calls the CIA and lets them know what happened, and they are already in town. His boss is already in town, and they think he's responsible for killing all of his team members and stealing the list because he is the only one alive. And he realizes that the restaurant that they've decided to meet in is full of all these spies, and that they're his co-workers. And he's like, oh, what's this separate spy team doing here? And he realizes that he has been pinned for a mole hunt due to a few recent missions having failures. And we can kind of assume he must have been on those missions if they are immediately assuming that it's him in this case. So he's been framed for the murder of all of his teammates and the theft of what they were hired to prevent. So he escapes, and he's on the lam, and one of his teammates who he thinks is dead turns up alive. It's Claire, the wife of his immediate boss who died on the mission, who was shot during the mission. And she claims to have never been in the vehicle he saw explode. And she teams up with him, and they attempt to steal the actual knock list from the CIA at Langley. So they go on this great hijinks, this great situation of him having to come down in ropes into a secret lab with all these cool lights and effects, and it's an excellent sequence. I think the best part of the signature sequence of this movie, where Tom Cruise comes down on the wire, is that it's all real. There's no CGI, and it's completely relatable. Anyone can relate to being suspended from a wire, and then you're just trying not to touch the floor. It's essentially, in toddler terms, it's the floor is lava. The floor is lava is the best spy sequence. Most, what movie has such a distinct spy sequence that just wow, the tension in the scene is insane. Just for the fact that he's hanging for so long. And although it is a movie and he's not really hanging for that long, he is hanging for a very long time in real life. But just the stakes of the scene are completely, if he should make a single noise, or if a drop of sweat should hit the floor, the whole team is going to be busted, and he's going to be arrested, and he's definitely going to go to jail for attempting to steal something that he is actually trying to steal. But the only reason he's trying to steal the list is to essentially entrap a known criminal element who's known for corrupting CIA agents. And all he wants is to get that person's trust so that he can locate the person who betrayed him and his team, because he doesn't know who it is. And spoiler alert, if you have not seen the movie, please watch the movie. Just watch the movie. If you like anything I said before, just watch the movie, don't listen. Watch the movie, don't listen. Watch the movie, don't listen. Spoiler alert, his boss, who he thought had been killed on the mission, the one that's married, the woman that he's working with, the one that's married to her, turns up alive and has a very dramatic story for how he survived and how he's been following Ethan around Europe this whole time, just trying to catch up with him. Ethan realizes that he's lying to him, and essentially his only question left is the wife also in on it? So the movie just has this really great personal story that, although it's a lot of plot elements of trying to steal the list and all this. It's all done through character interactions, and the characters are very distinct amongst each other. I mean, it really builds up to a very personal, and very, you know, rough, tough, difficult finale. You know, the fact that the final sequence of this movie is on top of a bullet train, and it actually still to this day feels like he's legitimately hanging off of the bullet train. Even if you can maybe see the effects a little bit more, there's still things that are filmed for real with real lights and real miniatures, and there are fans being used. So at least the texture and the shake and the feeling of the scene, it feels real. It's not our traditional fight scene, but that's what makes it so exciting. It really is a battle of the will of these two guys. It's so much bigger than just a fight. It's about the strength of will and who's right. The final battle on top of the train is so intense and amazing. You have this whole helicopter sequence. I had a very great experience in high school where, as part of the high school robotics team, I was just the video guy. We got a field trip to Lucasfilm, which is in the Presidio. So I was born and raised in San Francisco, California, and my high school, in being there, my robotics team got to go to Lucasfilm, and we got to see a little demo reel on their big screen. I had made a documentary the year before about my robotics team, and they played it on the big screen at Lucasfilm. It was amazing, and we got to see all of ILM's models. We got to see the real life R2D2. There was no one in it, no one was operating it, but it was just there. It was real. I got to see it for real. And I've forgotten so much of what I experienced there. It was really an incredible time. But my favorite thing that I saw the still preserved miniature for the train crash impact scene from Mission Impossible. And all that was in there was the train itself and the crashed helicopter. They were just left as they were left. And it was so cool. It was so long. It was like the size of a room. And I remember geeking out a little bit about it with one of the guys who was really happy to talk about it. I don't remember anything he said, but it was just very cool. And to this day, I still have this little packet of postcards from them, and I've never ever given them away. It's just for myself. I keep for myself as a memory of being there. But that's how much Mission Impossible was like a touchstone for me, because from a young age, I could appreciate how well the movie was made and how intense that final sequence was. And even in high school, got to see the miniature that made that amazing sequence, and that it was real. Even if it wasn't full scale real, it was still something real. It was photographed for real. And you just can't mistake that with your eye. There's some kind of magic that's there that cannot be mistaken. As great as CGI is, and even though it will eventually overtake everything else, there's nothing like seeing something that really reflects off of a surface. There's something about it that's authentic. So, that being said, let's get nerdy. So welcome to the Nerd Zone. We're going to get real geeky about this movie. I'm going to talk about the clues and subtext of Mission Impossible. This movie is filled with clues. Being that it is a spy movie, a bit of a detective movie, a spy is essentially just a covert detective gathering evidence, sometimes undercover, oftentimes undercover. And so it's important when the detective finds clues, they're putting pieces of the story together. And that's the filmmaking itself is doing that in this movie, and that's what I really appreciate. We start off in what appears to be the lower part of a building, or maybe a subterranean level of a warehouse. We're not really sure where we're at, but it's a very dark, big space. And there's a man standing out of this, what seems to be one single room. But this whatever this structure is has no windows. But he's looking at a screen, a little screen, which features a little scene of some people in a hotel. And there's this Russian man interrogating another Russian, trying to figure out who his contact is, and basically showing him there's this, what appears to be a dead, very beautiful woman, but a dead woman lying on the bed. And the guy sitting on the bed, who's being interrogated, appears to be drunk. He seems to be out of it. And you can kind of piece together just by watching what's going on. He seems to be to blame for violence that happened to this woman. And this Russian guy wants information on him in order to help him out with this situation. The guy gives up the information, and then a Swedish girl comes in with a platter and a drink. The guy drinks the drink, and then he passes out. And the Russian guy, who's wearing this big black jacket, familiar face, I know this face, but I don't recall the name. The woman and the Russian guy carry the dude out. And then all of a sudden, other men show up who pull the walls away. And we realize the screen that we're watching, the little man watching the screen, this is a tech guy watching the screen. And the set pulls away right in front of him. And the very next thing we see after the whole set pulls away and people pull the walls away and pull the guy away to wherever they're supposed to go, we see the Russian guy do the Mission Impossible face mask pull, revealing that he's in fact Tom Cruise, which I still think that effect sells. I think it works. And he's like, "Get this piece of trash out of here." And after saying that, he immediately rushes to the bed. And during this sequence, the guy watching the screen was looking at his watch, going, "Come on, guys, get the information, get the information. Time's almost up, time's almost up." And I think that being that there's a certain, well, what we're about to see, Ethan Hunt rushes to the bed, to the woman laying down, and basically pats her on the face, trying to wake her up. And it's kind of the Sleeping Beauty type of scene. And that's kind of the right off the bat. And she is so beautiful. The actress who plays Claire, talk about setting a standard for a young age. I was just like, whoa. She truly looks like a classic Disney princess, and who's just like, the Sleeping Beauty type of archetype. And he's very tender and he's very careful with her. And you see in these close-ups, because everything up to this point was wide. The video camera angle is wide. The shot of the guy watching the screen was a wide shot. Everything is kind of far away and dark. And it's kind of uncomfortable and it's not happy. And inside the darkness is this light, warm little room where something sad has happened. And this one guy just cares about the girl. And the only close-up we get is how much Tom Cruise cares about Claire. And the next close-up is Claire looking back at him. But before she looks, as she wakes up, she feels his hand and just nuzzles it with this kind of tender love. And then she realizes it's him, and there's this kind of awkward kind of co-acknowledgement between the two of them, that there's something there of deep importance. So this is all the first clue of the movie. This is essentially, each film that you watch uses what's called film language, and that film language identifies to you certain visual cues and clues to expect throughout the movie. So essentially this opening sets up a very specific film language, which says, the man who's outside of the mission is aware of everything going on inside of the mission, and everyone who's going through the mission is basically subject to whatever's happening. In essence, the man who's looking outside of the mission is the one who's in control. That's sort of a plot clue, because later on we get to the rest of our cast of characters and the villain. plays into this clue. But also, we establish very important information. There is a deep, unrequited love between Tom Cruise's character and the Claire character, who, I'm sorry, I did not look up your name before I did this, but I was so excited to do the video. I love you. This is what matters in this scene, because this plays a role in both the plot and the character development of the rest of the movie. It's our establishing emotional content that will now build up everything that follows and motivate things that follow later. Because if we didn't have this information up front, there's emotional baggage that we would see the characters deal with that we wouldn't even understand if we didn't do this particular opening. You know, you could start with balls out action, you could start with explosions, and all that stuff would be very entertaining, but it's not the stuff that will make you, when you're done watching Mission Impossible 7, go, you know, that was good, but the truth be told, even if I kind of like 4 the most, 1 is still kind of the best. That nagging feeling in your soul is because of this. Because even though this is kind of boring of an opening, it gives you all the information you need to know for when we get to the finale. And that, Jim, if you've watched this movie, this is the spoiler section, so I'm just talking about it like we all know how the ending is. When Jim Phelps is revealed to be the bad guy, the confrontation between him and Ethan, because Claire is his wife. And this sort of hidden emotional baggage between these 3 people has been going on prior to this movie. That's what this opening scene establishes. And basically the first thing Phelps says to Ethan when, after being revealed, Phelps basically says, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. And he says it to Ethan, knowing that this whole time there has been this sort of mutual affection between his wife and this younger man. And he, you know, John Vogt, who plays Phelps, is much older. And essentially when you see the team in the beginning of this movie, they're all young people. They're all in their, you know, late 20s, early 30s, or whatever it may be, very young. And the boys are boys, and they're a bit arrogant and unkept, but they, you know, everyone's good at their jobs, which is why they're there. And you see John Voight's character is so stiff, and he's very old school, and even though he's relaxed and he likes everyone, there's something just about him that's just not enjoying himself. He's not having fun with everybody else. Even though he's kind of smiling, he's not having fun with everybody else. He, you know, even the way he's shot in the first mission, the first scene where the whole team is together having the mission laid out, you know, the young people are all shot at a table sitting close to each other, and John Voight is shot away from the on the other side of the table by himself in the dark. In essence, also the first another hint going back to that opening scene where the man alone by the screen is the one who's really running the mission, or who really knows what's going on in the mission. And everyone else is running the mission, but they may be subject to whatever this man tells them. And again, he's alone. So he's alone against the rest of these people, and that's how he feels from a personal standpoint. That comes up later. But there's all this buildup of this baggage, and even that first scene establishes a lot going on when the team is first together. It is so much is established in that scene that's so important to the rest of the movie. Where from the opening scene we establish Tom Cruise's affectionate, unrequited love with Claire, and in the very next scene with the whole team being together for the first time in the film, they give off such a vibe that they're going to survive the rest of this movie, that you're not worried about any of them dying. They all relate to each other very well. But the blocking is very specific. You know, we have the boys sitting next to each other, Emilio Estevez closest to camera. Emilio Estevez and Tom Cruise a little closer to camera. And the girls sitting next to each other, but they're all pretty close-knit to each other. But we kind of essentially set up the buddy system that's kind of going on here, where the girls are kind of together and kind of not. and the boys are kind of like bouncing off of each other. And what do boys do when they like a girl? They pick on that girl. And so he's picking on Claire's coffee during this scene. And again, another clue to what's going on. Phelps very awkwardly says, "Hey, don't trash my wife's coffee." You know what I mean? And even though they're talking about coffee, this is a subtextual clue. He's like, stop checking out my wife. Stop wanting my wife in front of me. All his feelings of insecurity are building up here. And he's just barely keeping a lid on it. You know, that there is such a feeling that he's apart from these people. And ultimately, he's about to betray them. You know, again, if you've seen this movie, you know what's about to happen. He is about to betray every single one of them and try to kill or blame every single one of them for what happened. And so that's a part of why he's being distant as well, because he's about to do the kill. The lion is about to go for his prey. It's messed up. It's really messed up when you really think about why he behaves this way. Why he's only feigning like he's having fun, but he's clearly very much not having fun. And maybe he's just not that kind of guy either. We don't really know. Because especially if you don't know, this scene just sort of seems to establish his character traits of being a little more stiff and all that stuff. But once you do know what he's planning to do, it has a completely different subtext. And when you do know that the movie ends with saying, "Stop looking at my wife. Don't covet your neighbor's wife." Just that disgusting feeling of jealousy and sadness that this old man has, that his younger wife is attracted to another young man who is a good man, and he's not. He is not a good man. He's totally the mole that they're looking for in the first place. So a lot of baggage is established in the first 10 minutes of this movie. That's all character stuff. And with the boys being buddies, they're so clearly buddies. And the whole younger team is really, the whole team is really a kind of a buddy group where they've clearly worked together a lot. They seem to be kind of an all-star team. But there's this undercurrent beneath everything that for the younger team, you could feel these guys could go on for 20 years doing their spy work, and you know they'd be happy. But because of this poison that's been welling up for so long in this other guy, it's all gonna go tits up, as they say. So these moments are all clues to our subtext, the subtext of the character drama brewing underneath the surface. So even though on a surface level it appears to be a casual conversation, it is not a casual conversation. These characters are having a different conversation with each other. Literally, everything that Phelps says to Ethan Hunt in this scene is about, "Stop looking at my wife." And Tom Cruise is just young and arrogant and thinks, "Yeah, I mean, I'm attracted, but who cares? I'm just having a good time being a spy dude." You know, that's what Tom Cruise is thinking. He is in the most innocent form of his, world police self. He's an innocent. And the horrible thing that would reshape his reality has not occurred to him yet. It's clearly happened to Phelps. He's stiff and cold and has been through it for however many years. And this young, arrogant kid is just having a good time. But that brewing, unrequited romance is so deadly to Phelps. It's against his personal life. And that I believe is why he picked Ethan to be the one who was blamed for committing the crimes against the whole team. And that's personal stuff. That's personal. That's deeply personal. And you have to read into it. You have to watch the movie knowing the twist and re-examine every single scene knowing that twist. That is the only way that you can understand that a lot is happening here that could not be done any other way. For you to feel for each of these deaths, the fact that Tom Cruise gets along so well with Emilio Estevez, and you're just like, man, these are the bros here. It's all gonna be cool. It hurts when that guy is the first one to go, because he even has like a little romantic exchange with another agent, and it's an agent that who typically portrays some kind of romantic interest with Tom Cruise's spy alternate identities. So when they're spies, they seem to act like they know each other and have something going on. But as normal people, they just kind of work together. It's like, ha 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 ha, we had to make out in front of that guy, ha 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 ha. But, the tech guy is actually interested in her. This coffee scene also establishes the first plot clue of Drake Hotel in Chicago. So when the two young guys are making fun of John Vogt for being older, they ask him where they put him up for his last mission, and he says, Drake Hotel, Chicago. And the boys both laugh and just like, oh, getting the cushy missions now. I guess it's because you're getting old now. You're on your way out, bro. And that elicits a certain kind of response from him where he's quiet and he's not really having that much fun. All this is clues. This even his lack of kind of reaction to it is a clue. Because, again, everything that's about to unfold. And he also establishes the rendezvousing back at the hotel suite at 4 a.m. 0400, which is how Tom Cruise learns that Claire is alive, because she arrives at the hotel suite at 4 in the morning. And so much is said here, but it's played so much with casual sense of conversation. You don't think of it as part of the storytelling, but it is, and that's what makes it a very strong scene. I believe this movie was written by David Koepp and Robert Towne. David Koepp wrote the Jurassic Park movie, and the first draft, or at least the majority of the script, I believe, of the first Spider-Man film was from David Koepp. So, we got some big names on this movie besides the director and the lead cast. But, the writing has subtext to it. It has something that, again, when you know the ending, it means a lot more than what it meant the first time. So that kind of detail to work into ahead of time, both with how people are blocked with each other, how the buddies are filmed, how everyone is positioned on screen, what it all takes to make that kind of meaning to you personally, because it all adds up when they die in the following scenes. So the Drake Hotel in Chicago detail is really crucial to all the reveals later. It's a really important clue just being thrown on the ground right there. Essentially, once the mission goes haywire and the majority of the team gets killed, Ethan meets up with Kittredge, his boss, the director of the IMF program, and they discuss that this operation they were running, in which the team was taken out, was essentially a mole hunt. They intercepted a message from someone called Job 314. We intercepted intel regarding a Job 314, referring to some kind of deal going on with Max for this knock list. And they know Max is a known arms dealer, they just don't know where he is. And so Ethan Hunt, with that little piece of information, goes online and he starts messaging anyone related to Job or Job 314, but he can't find anything. And just right in front of him, on the bookshelf behind the computer, is a Bible. And so if you're familiar with the Bible at all, you're going to figure this next part out. He clearly is. He looks at the Bible and goes, Job 314. And he finds another clue. And this clue is both a clue for the character and for the rest of the show. And I have written it down. So Job 314, he starts going on a bunch of religious websites, and whoever he can messaging through Job 314 and saying the quotation and asking for a meeting. And the quotation of Job 314 goes like this: with kings and counselors of the earth who built for themselves places now lying in ruins. That's pretty powerful right there. And I'll explain why later. But he sends this quote out in every language, on every website, loosely related to religion, and he gets a hit back, and it leads to a meeting. So he gets in this very cool scene that is entirely point of view. This is another clue too. The filmmaking makes a lot of different choices that are very important. They're not choices just made to divvy things up and keep it interesting. I think that kind of directing is not the kind of directing that makes great movies all the time. Sometimes you got to have a plan for how each scene leads to the next scene. You can't just shoot and hope that it cuts together. At least that's the highest form of what directing should be, is that each scene should lead to the next one. Even though it doesn't seem like it does when you're shooting at the time, the shots should lead to the following scene in some kind of way. You've got to generate fluidity. And so when this meeting is set, we suddenly just go into this point of view shot where we are walking up to a man on a bench and we ask for a light. And the man lights a match. And then a car speeds up. And we just all see this in one shot as if we are the viewer talking to the man on the bench. And a car pulls up to the man on the bench, and the man on the bench shoves you, the point of view person, into the car. We are Tom Cruise. And they say, put this on. And he says, what if I don't want to? And they say, well, then you're not going to meet Max. And then they just shove it over his head. And that dissolves to seeing Tom Cruise sitting in a chair in a room with a goofy black mask on his face. And he's just looking around like, okay. He's just really not interested in what they're doing. And they say, if Max doesn't like what you have to say, you're going to wear that mask indefinitely. And he's like, well, I'll give it a shot anyway. And so Max nods and they take the mask off. And when they take the mask off, Ethan is surprised to find Max is a woman. A finely dressed British woman. And she figures out from talking to him right away, oh, you're not Job. She had already paid Job for the job, and he's here asking for money. And she realizes, oh, you're not Job. And he asks Max for money. And Max says, why? And he explains that the knock list that she has is bogus. And she realizes, you are not Job. And she recites, Job does not quote scripture. And your message was also aggressive, but playful. And Job is not playful. So she's defining the character traits of the villain that we're looking for. In a way, Ethan is getting to know who the villain is, even if he doesn't have the villain yet. So the character traits are part of the clue. The character traits are how characters figure out who each other are. It's not just there to be good writing, but as a spy thriller, these character traits are very important. Ethan Hunt is trying to lock down who this person is. Now, I already described, right? In the opening scene, we got the group of coworkers of the same age who are all buddy-buddy, shoulder-to-shoulder, warm lighting, playing around, goofing around, and Jon Voight is not goofing around, and he's not very impressed with his young team based on their attitude. And so again, this character trait is being reinforced, but we don't know yet that it's about Jon Voight. But that character trait is there. And Tom Cruise, Ethan Hunt, is consistently confident, aggressive, but playful. He's getting it done, but with a very good attitude, and he tries to keep it light. You know, it's okay, fine, that's cool. Trying to read the knock list, her computer gets unusually hot, and Ethan warns her, look, that's a tracker. They're trying to find out where you are. You better pack your bags before you try looking at that. And this becomes the proof that he's not lying to her, and he's looking out for her because he saves her from getting caught by the cops. So what we have is great character writing, but also great sequences that bring the characters together. that this is a trust building incident. Not only does the scene establish the characters and get their relationship to begin, but it also becomes a trust building exercise that makes Max allow Ethan into her circle. This is how he infiltrates, by actually helping her out. Like, hey, if I was trying to get you, I wouldn't stop you from being got. So please give me some money so that I can catch the guy who totally screwed me over. And then to ensure that she believes that he's not going to betray her, he's like, and I would like the same amount after I get you the real list. And then she says, I want the full list. I want Europe and America. And he's like, okay. And so the stakes are very high. You know, he is agreeing to break the law and give this woman a lot, the information to kill a lot of people. And but he's doing it so he can catch the guy who was ultimately going to do that anyway. But now he has to do this in such a way where he can still catch her at the end, thus not breaking the law, and somehow redeeming himself in the eyes of the CIA. So he's got a big hill to climb here, and he himself makes it bigger and worse. But it's all because he's on this personal mission. You know, he's still himself. He's still Ethan Hunt, who handles things with a casual way and a wink when he does everything. But he's on a personal mission. The inside of him is going through a lot. And you notice when he's around people he doesn't trust, he is confident and cocky and he's good. And when he's around people that he trusts, you see how he actually feels. And we don't know this until later on in the movie. So now, with their mission in place and the financial means to achieve it, Ethan is going to go bust into the CIA and get the real knock list. So he needs a team. And him and Claire team up to get another team. And Claire has a guy already, and Ethan finds a guy that he thinks is right for the job. And so they have a team of 4. But Claire's guy is John Reno. And John Reno is very cocky when he comes in. He talks about how he can fly a helicopter straight into Fort Knox and park it in the lobby. And that would be easier than breaking into Langley. And he is setting up the finale of the movie. He's saying he is so good he can do something that's incredibly difficult and basically impossible. But this is actually impossible. Krieger has very specific character traits. He's arrogant. And when they do the Langley mission, all right, we had a huge clue. We get a massive clue. Before they've even really started the hard stuff, they essentially steal a fire truck, and they all get dressed up as firemen and bust into the CIA as firemen trying to put out a fire. And they get into a room with the guy who's taking them to the specific room where the fire appears to be. And they, it's Krieger and Ethan knocking 2 CIA sort of, maintenance guys out. But Krieger pulls out a knife and Ethan catches his arm before he can stab the guy. And the knife, although it's not showcased too closely, it's the same knife that stabbed the guy earlier, that stabbed the decoy spy. We come back to this in a flashback later, but that's what happens. And Ethan says, 0 body count. And Krieger says, looking at Ethan, we'll see. He seems almost offended to have been stopped from killing. But the way he says, we'll see, and he's looking at Ethan, seems like he's talking about Ethan. Which is very strange for a guy who's getting on a gig. That he kind of already wants to kill the guy he was working for. And that's another clue. Arrogant, bloodthirsty, and very upset about not getting to kill. So we're just getting all the reasons he was probably disavowed. Like, no, dude, you dishonorably killed a lot of people. You're just fucking out of here, bro. You're just out of here. Not only that, we find out that he is sloppy. when they are doing the famous gag where Ethan Hunt is being hung by wires to infiltrate the impossible to infiltrate, you know, vault that is also a workspace for a guy with the highest clearance who looks at all these special super classified files that the CIA keeps. During this amazing sequence, there's a part where, you know, John Reno, who's holding the wire that's letting Ethan down, which by itself is a job, sneezes, and that almost sets off the alarms. And Ethan tells him, from here on out, be quiet, don't make a fucking noise. You know, like already he tried to kill someone, and now he sneezed. Now he I mean, he is just messing this mission up left and right. And then a rat appears, and he stops holding Ethan in order to kill the rat. So sloppy, Ethan almost hits the ground. You know, multiple times already on this mission, he has almost ruined the mission. And then he's pulling him up. And after Ethan gets the data, something that has happened so fast, I don't notice that it really happens, even though it's a big moment. When Ethan comes back up with the copied knock list, Krieger pops up, grabs the list out of his hand, and is so happy. He says something, and then he drops his knife. And they both look down like, oh no. And the knife hits the table just as the lights turn and the guy has returned to the office. So they didn't set off the alarm immediately, but they left evidence that they had been there. And essentially, Krieger has ruined the mission. The whole point of being a spy is that you get in and out and nobody knows you were there. And he has almost ruined it 3 times, and then the 4th time is the charm because he drops his knife. Now, it is a reveal that there's a copy on the computer, but essentially, had the knife not been there, there would be no immediate suspicion. So Krieger has ruined it. He's left evidence that someone was here. Very specific knife, again, left at the scene. So, you know, it almost seems narcissistic, like he wants to let people know he did something. You know, he's very arrogant in that way. So it's just this arrogance and this need to leave a calling card is a character trait that is specific to him because he continues to do it. And it is ruining missions. And not only that, the biggest red flag, the worst clue of them all, is after ruining the mission 4 times, he has an ego and an attitude with Tom Cruise saying, hey, when are we going to get our money? And Tom Cruise is like, when I get in touch with Max. And he's like, well, when's that going to be? He's so impatient. He wants to get paid so quickly. It's the way he's behaving isn't right. And he's behaving this way after nearly ruining everything. And essentially leaving evidence that they were there. I mean, you've totally screwed up the whole spy thing this whole time, Jean Reno. From a character standpoint, very, very good writing. I mean, all these things are clues and great writing for character traits. I think the biggest problem today is that so many people are written exactly the same. They're all say the same things. It's character traits is kind of an unusual thing to have anymore, where now it seems that movies rely more on the actor having distinct sounds than the writing itself having distinct character traits. I mean, there's work being done there that it's not maybe obvious to you, but you feel it. You sense that it's happening. But all these things are these red flags that let us know Krieger's a bad guy. I mean, he's disavowed because he's a bad guy. Where Ving Rhames, on the other hand, he's a lot more like Ethan. He's really chill. He's really laid back. And is actually resistant to doing this mission. And it's Ethan who just kind of brushes his ego a little bit. But aren't you the guy who did this amazing thing way back when? I mean, it was technically against the law, but you did something that was basically impossible. And Ving Rhames is like, I had nothing to do with that masterpiece of art. You know, essentially not acknowledging that he had done it, but, you know, insinuating that he's proud of doing it. And he, in very much in that way, it's like he is like a brother to Ethan. They're both kind of have this similar attitude toward their work, where they're going to be professional. They're not going to rat themselves out, but they are proud of their work in a somewhat cocky but fun, playful way. Like they're good dudes that just yeah, might have something to do with that amazing piece of work over there. And that's the moment where they bond, because Krieger in this moment tries to say that he'll just walk off with the knock list and make his own money somewhere else. Screwing up the mission. They're on this mission for a reason, and it's not to make the money. And it's just, you know, there's all the flags are saying this guy's a bad dude. You need to make sure he ends up in jail after this, or something. So it's really no surprise when he's on the bad guy team at the end of the movie. But all these character traits are written. I mean, these things are there because they contribute to distinctly understanding who does what, collecting evidence. You know, the evidence of the movie must not be too obvious, but it must still be present so that you understand, oh yeah, that was coming. All right, cool. But to go that deep and to have that much to say says a lot about how good the writing is. And again, we're getting all the foundation of these clues. The clues to the whodunit. But then Ethan also notices the Bible on the floor, and he picks it up. And he notices on the inside flap, it says, Drake Hotel in Chicago, stamped by the Gideons. And he realizes the biggest clue of this entire movie was what he was using from the start of the movie. The character trait. This old man has got these easy jobs where he's got a fat expense account and he's in the Drake Hotel. Look at him, old man, going out the door. That conversation comes back to haunt him in this moment. And it is the biggest clue that either A, Jim's alive. Well, he's probably alive, but also Jim Phelps is responsible for what happened to his team. The person that he was the closest to, although it's not showcased in the movie. And that doesn't really need to be. We know that the team is close and tight-knit to each other. That's really all we need. The way they talk to each other is so personal. But that clue is all he needed. And it's after that clue that he calls Kittredge. And it's after he calls Kittredge that Jon Voight re-emerges from the dead. And you note that the first time we see Jon Voight as a dead, bleeding person, it's after Ethan gets back to the safe house after everyone's died and he's escaped the clutches of Kittredge and his CIA double agent team. He sees this vision of Jim Phelps dying and falling before him, but it's actually Claire coming toward him asking him what's wrong, what's going on. So when we see Jon Voight reemerge after this phone call to get Langley to trace him to London, it's not shot the same way. We see Ethan acting like he's shocked and surprised, and the music is shocking and surprising, but it's not shot like that. It's shot quite normally. And it's almost like a play, and that's because both people are playing. See, the filmmaking is a clue to what's going on. Ethan is pretending to be surprised that Jon Voight is alive because he already saw that the Bible that he carried, again, a personal note. Now, he didn't just bring the Bible because it's part of the clue. He brought the Bible. This is from the safe house where his team was. So just finding that Bible was from the Drake Hotel in Chicago, and that's basically how Jon Voight has been communicating with Max. It all adds up. It all adds up to horrific effect. And so we get this quaint scene where Jon Voight and Ethan Hunt are sitting across from each other. And Jon Voight says, Kittredge was the one who shot me. So again, you see, if you've watched Mission Impossible 3, 4, and 5, we have the same exact twist being thrown at us every single time. It was the boss. The boss did it. Well, yeah, but the wrong boss. Wrong boss. And Ethan, who, if you know what's going on, he knows that this guy's lying to him. Why, Jim? Why? He says, why, Jim? And they're both talking as if they're talking about Kittredge, but they're actually talking straight to each other. Why, Jim? And Jim basically explains his own motivations, but claiming that it's Kittredge. And this you see in real life is what you call projections, when people say things that are happening out of other people, but it's actually what's happening out of them. And basically, Jim's explanation is his own motivation, which is you're in a terrible marriage that's going nowhere. You've lost all your power. Now the president is making decisions that you used to make. And you feel hurt and you feel left to the side. And how dare they treat you like that? And he's saying that as if it's Kittredge's motivations, but it's his own motivations. And during the sequence, Ethan breaks down how all of his co-workers must have been killed by Kittredge, but in the flashback shots, we're seeing John Vogt and Claire setting off the bombs and killing the various team members. So Ethan Hunt is saying Kittredge did it, but subjectively we're being told that he's thinking he knows that John Voight did it. So the filmmaking in this way is doing this very ingenious montage loop where one thing is being said, but another thing is being shown. The audience is being shown Ethan working out what happened. And he hits conflict when he imagines, well, how did he kill this other team member? And he immediately goes to Claire, like the flash goes to Claire bombing that team member. And it cuts right back to Ethan going, no, he could have done that one himself. And then we see another cut to Jim Phelps pulling out a detonator after coming out of the water that he threw himself into pretending to be shot. Basically the timing should have added up. But that conflict is it's the one reason the movie hasn't ended yet, because the last question for Ethan on a personal level, although he was already suspicious of her before, he doesn't want to believe she's responsible for any of this because he loves her. He doesn't want her to be the one who did it. And that conflict is the thing that's not resolved yet. This subtle love triangle that was never distinctly shown, but hinted at just enough to know that there's some discomfort there. And that's all you need to know. That little synecdoche is all you need to know about the entire struggle that they're going through. Is that, a movie doesn't have to do all the thinking for you. A good film should allow you to think about it more when you step away from it. If you're not still thinking about it and trying to figure it out, then it might have been entertaining, but it really engage itself with you. The best kind of films should engage with you and you should be thinking about them, and it's just kind of a relationship to the movie, this weird moving painting that we love to watch. But that is the game being played for the final confrontation of this movie. That not only must Ethan nail Jim Phelps and Max at the same time, but also he has to figure out whether Claire had something to do with it. He has to figure out for sure, with no question, that whether or not she's involved. And so the way he does it is that he basically tells Claire where the money is supposed to be, and that Job is supposed to be there to collect it. And Ethan will be back there as soon as he's done doing his part of the mission, gathering whatever he's doing. And so Claire goes to the back of the train where the money is supposed to be, and he finds Jim Phelps sitting next to a big black bag. And she says, "Hey, Jim, where's Ethan? Did he show up yet? I was thinking maybe we shouldn't kill him. Maybe we should let him live. The cops already think he did everything." And Jim doesn't say anything. Jim just sits there quietly and then pulls his face mask off, and it's Tom Cruise. And the look on her face of, oh, I just gave away the movie to you, you know. So, again, spies sussing out other spies. In this moment at the end of the movie, when she is caught red-handed for being involved with Jim, and even knowing that they were planning to kill Ethan this entire time, this goes back to what Krieger said, 0 body count, we'll see. Even Krieger's hinting that they're going to kill Ethan at the end of this movie. And when Jim comes in and all is revealed, Ethan asks why. Why? And Jim says, do not covet thy neighbor's wife. That he was so offended and scared and insecure about that potential relationship, it was worth framing Ethan and putting him through all of this drama just to kill him at the end and prove that he's somehow the bigger, better lion in the pack. And Ethan would have never done this to this man, who he valued as a friend, and was the only person that he, at least we as an audience, saw visually that haunted him in his mind. That person is the exact person that betrayed him. That level of personal baggage and drama for what appears to be a very fun, light movie, all of that story is happening underneath the surface. That's what great writing is. That's what great filmmaking is, that there are levels of drama and reasons and things that characters are thinking about. All that stuff is what makes a great film. That's what great filmmaking is about. And you can't look at any of the other sequels and say that much goes on. And the very fact that in our final action sequence, after Jim kills his own wife because Jim is about to shoot Ethan and get what he wants, and Claire says, don't, Jim. And that's his final offense, that he knows that the wife does love Ethan back. And so he shoots her first. And only for that. And this is when people, this is why I hate filmmakers today. Not that I hate them, but this is why I think filmmakers are most misguided when it comes to the usage of power, and when it comes to superheroes and the conundrum of how do you deal with a story with someone who can do anything. The character choice has to be there for why they make a certain choice. In this scene, Jim is the only one with the killing power. He's the only one with a gun. And for a character reason, his anger at his wife for showing affection back for this other guy is the only reason he doesn't shoot Ethan first, is because he only did all of this to prove in some primal way to her that he's the best lion. And the fact that she still prefers the younger, sexier lion, who is more relatable to her, he just has to kill her because he cannot accept being seen that way or being not seen as this great, amazing thing. He needs that validation for himself. And that character baggage is the only reason he didn't kill Ethan, and it's what gave Ethan the leg up to get out of there anyway. After killing his wife, Jon Voight goes to the top of the train for some reason, for the final action sequence that I talked about earlier. And Ethan, out of this personal anger, follows him up. So again, the motivations for Ethan keep increasing as the movie goes. They don't shrink. Things don't get easier just to make him get out of there alive. Things that get harder. And so when we get to this incredible train sequence, there's moments where we think Ethan gets knocked off the train, and the camera, while doing an epic movement over Jon Voight crawling on the train, goes over him, and whoa, that's a cool shot. It's not a cool shot for the sake of being a cool shot. It reveals, oh, Ethan's alive and he's following him and he's gonna get back on top of the train to get John Voight. That is how we have to approach these stories. That's what we're actually here to tell. That this is not a movie that is about a spy catching a bad guy. This is a movie about two people who are friends who both love the same woman, and for one of them, that love turns into a sick perversion that leads to all this horrible things being done, and for the other, that love just means doing the right thing and trying to avenge friends. So these two different points of view on how to approach love, but also the two different points of view on when you don't get love. You know, Ethan wasn't even trying to pursue Claire, but as far as Jim could tell, it didn't matter. They were going to hook up and he was going to lose his wife. He already says he's in a terrible marriage. So, but it's because you're an asshole, Jim. That's kind of why. It's because you're an asshole and you need to accept that. Just grow up, Jim. That's all you had to do. How it should have ended. Jim Phelps just goes to... Here's an idea for how it should have ended for Mission Impossible. Jim Phelps and Claire go to marriage counseling. The movie never happens. Okay, you know, unless they already tried to go to marriage counseling and that's actually what led to the movie happening. That's a whole nother how it should have ended by itself. But yeah, so... And again, they're both in love with the same woman. So... Claire dead in Ethan's arms. Already he was courting the other woman, but he was really in love with her. Now again he has a dead team member, but this time now he knows she's dead and it's for real, and he'll never have a chance to. Even though she committed this horrible crime and was planning to betray him this whole time, he still loved her. He still had this feeling for her, and still hated losing her. And that is the final straw. That is the last straw. Now he's gotta get Jim Phelps. So, you know, John Voight escapes to the roof of the train, and angry Tom Cruise goes up there too. And then we're just seeing Jim, you know, using these heavy magnet things to pull himself to the end of the train where a helicopter has arrived. And who's flying that helicopter? It's Krieger. Ethan's hanging on the side of the train. Oh my god. You know, this level of intensity will not be matched until we get Spider-Man 2 with Tobey Maguire, and Tobey Maguire goes, ah! You know, it's such an amazing sequence as another train passes by and Ethan just narrowly gets back up. And it gets to the point where Ethan is so close to getting Jim, but Krieger starts turning the helicopter. Now that he stabilizes it, once he stabilizes it, he starts using the blades, and he starts flying the blades closer, trying to chop Ethan's head off with the spinning blades of the chopper. And just as the blades are about to hit Ethan, the back tail of the helicopter smacks the roof of the tunnel and sort of knocks him around. And that is Ethan's cue. Jim gets onto the helicopter. Ethan hops after him and grabs the sticky gum bomb, slaps it on the windshield on John Reno, and hops off that helicopter. And as the helicopter explodes, the G-forces blow Tom Cruise onto the train, and he narrowly survives as the helicopter smashes into the ground, killing Phelps, smashes into the train itself, narrowly missing Tom Cruise. And everything comes to a screeching halt as the blade of the helicopter gets right here. You know the angels were looking out for Ethan Hunt on that one. I mean, that is totally divine intervention. No two ways about it. But, you know, the character trait comes back. So Krieger, who has fucked up every single thing he has done, fucks up his own attempt to kill Ethan because he's just not thinking about the tale. He's not thinking about the consequences of his actions. It's all a loop of experience. I want to go back to the quote I read earlier of Job 3:14. With kings and counselors of the earth who built for themselves places now lying in ruins. So that's the quotation that is said only one time throughout the movie. But it's also the biggest clue to Jim Phelps that he already explained in his motivations. The Cold War is over. He was protecting the kingdom, the United States. And now the president has taken his command, and he's just sitting here feeling useless, feeling like he's on his way out. It's everything he built now lies in ruins, and that's how he feels on a personal level. So the quote Job 3:14 refers to his personal motivations. Everything he worked for got taken away from him. And even his wife, who he loves and he married, seems to be going for another guy. And rather than just, retire with some level of dignity, he decides to rip off the company and kill all of his coworkers. And not only that, but frame his favorite coworker, his sort of the closest thing to best friends as he's got, frame that guy because it looked like his wife was going to end up with him. So, in essence, his motivation is also the consequence of his actions. He led his own life to ruin because he just couldn't accept the way things rolled out. He couldn't accept the things he worked for being taken away from him. His feeling about how he is ultimately how he generated his life. He felt like he was in ruins, but he really ruined everything. He didn't have to kill all those people. He did not have to do all that. But that's what he felt he had to do in order to be the big top line again. Very, very interesting character study. What I love about this movie is that the character traits are also the clues. And the clues are character trait revealers and character history and character elements that are important to understand in order to appreciate why those characters made those choices. Because there's layered reasons, there's history, there's baggage that's very important to appreciate in order to appreciate how good this movie is. So from a screenwriting point of view, from the way characters are presented and performed, the way sequences are directed to emphasize those meanings, Mission Impossible is an epically great film. I highly recommend it for those who haven't seen it, and to have the ability to examine it at this depth and at layers of depth, more than just the meaning to the plot, but genuinely the theme of the movie, that it echoes through this particular phrase. That's powerful stuff. That is the makings of great works, that they have that much depth. So, yeah. I think that's all I had to say. That was just my gut reaction, noticing all those character traits, noticing it was all there from the beginning. And that when you can re-examine the picture through that lens, it has those meanings. I think that's what great filmmaking is all about. That's what The Matrix is about. That's what Terminator 2 is about. All my favorite movies have bigger themes and bigger messages and bigger character journeys than what it appears to be based on the genre they may fall in. The genre is just the menu. The character stories are what we are here for. That is what lasts with us forever. Jurassic Park would not be Jurassic Park if Alan Grant didn't learn that he wants kids and that he can handle being around kids. That is a beautiful personal character story. That is the emotional thread that ties together Jurassic Park. And it don't matter if you notice it, but it's there. It's there for you to feel something. So that's what I have to say. I randomly brought up Jurassic Park just to make myself sound smarter. But remember, don't like, don't subscribe, and don't comment. And please watch Mission Impossible. It's so good. All right, aloha, take it easy. Thanks for getting bored with me.